From the heart of our nation's capital, here's Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
Welcome to Washington Watch. Always great to have you with us. Well, coming up on this Wednesday edition, even though the bill's text has yet to be released, the Senate's efforts to gain additional funding for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan while addressing the crisis at the southern border, well, it's running into more trouble.
President Biden, on numerous occasions, has stated he's willing to work with Republicans in a big way on immigration. And for over 2 months, Democrats have shown we are serious about reaching an agreement by remaining at the negotiating table. So we'll keep going, because senators don't need to be reminded of the consequences should we fail.
That was, of course, Senate Scare Leader Chuck Schumer. The question is the president really willing to work with the Republicans on the border crisis? According to Republicans, the president is providing a little more than lip service.
If we cannot secure our border, we need to close the border. If we have a president that doesn't want to secure the border, let's close the border until we get a president that actually is going to enforce our laws.
That was Florida Senator Rick Scott earlier today. The conflict over the bill is just as intense among Republican senators as it is between Republicans and Democrats. According to reports, the weekly lunch gathering of GOP senators yesterday left some with a bad case of indigestion. We're going to talk with Nebraska Senator Pete Ricketts in just a moment. You might recall this. Back in 2020, voters in Oregon passed a law legalizing personal quantities of illegal drugs. That's personal quantities. I guess that's all you can smoke or all you can take. I'm not sure what it means by personal. The law took effect in 2021. Now, to date, 31 states have legalized marijuana to differing degrees. Now, some states like Oregon are now backtracking as drug deaths have surged. Next month, lawmakers in Oregon are slated to dial back some decriminalization provisions.
We've got to have all the tools in our tool belt to address what's happening on the streets in Oregon, right? And we did remove a tool, and we are simply giving that tool back to the police.
That was Oregon Senate Majority Leader Kate Leiber. She was saying that yesterday. Now, frankly, this is not rocket science. We're going to talk with the Oregon State Representative Jeff Helfrich, which is he's the minority leader in the House. Now, over in Ohio, the state Senate today followed the State House in overriding Governor Mike DeWine's veto of the State SAFE Act. Now, you'll recall that's a measure that protects children from experimental drugs and surgeries that's being pushed by transgender activists.
With 23 yeas and 9 nays, the bill, having received the required constitutional majority, passes withstanding the objections of the governor.
That was the Ohio Senate President Matt Huffman just a little while ago. We're going to get a report from the Ohio State Senate when State Senator Andy Brenner joins us. As I mentioned yesterday, there is a chasmic divide between President Biden, his party, and most Americans. In results that were almost identical to exit polling in Iowa a week ago, a Harvard-Harris poll released on Monday shows the number one issue on the minds of voters is immigration, the invasion at our southern border. Now, what is the number one word on the lips of the president and his team? Abortion.
Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans, including the Speaker of the House, are hell-bent on going even further. To date, MAGA Republicans in Congress have proposed 3 additional national abortion bans to criminalize health care in every state.
That was President Biden last night. And here's what the Vice President, Kamala Harris, had to say as well.
The extremists are not done. In the United States Congress, extremists are trying to pass a national abortion ban to outlaw abortion in every state.
You know, that's absolutely amazing because I've not seen that bill. Now, I have seen a bill that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats actually put on the House floor and passed, a bill that would put into law abortion until birth in every state, actually eliminating all of the pro-life laws that have been passed over the last 4 or 5 decades. That's what's been on the House floor, not a bill as she described. So in 2022, the Democrats ran on the abortion issue. And guess what? It worked because the Republicans were silent. Question is now, are Republicans prepared to run on protecting life in the womb and on the border and pull the political rug out from underneath Democrats? We're going to discuss that later here on Washington Watch with Georgia Congressman Rich McCormick. Our word for today comes from Job chapter 9. For he is not a man, as I am, that I may answer him, and that we should go to court together. Nor is there any mediator between us who may lay his hand on us both. Let him take his rod away from me, and do not let dread of him terrify me. Then I would speak and not fear him, but it is not so with me. See, Job here identifies not only his need, but the need of mankind for a mediator between us and God, someone who would speak on our behalf and intercede for us with God, someone who can enable us to come before God without fear. What Job didn't have, we do have in Jesus Christ. Jesus is that mediator if we accept him as our Savior and Lord. He is our advocate before the Father. As Paul writes, let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. For more on our journey through the Bible, go to frc.org/Bible. Let me remind you, coming up next Wednesday, the National Gathering for Prayer and Repentance at the National Bible Museum. That is January the 31st, beginning at 7:30 a.m. Now, it is sold out, but you can join us online no matter where you are in the country. To register, to find out more, go to praydc.org or text the word prayer to 67742. That's the word prayer to 67742, and I'll send you a notification. All right, as work in the Senate on the border security agreement continues, some Republican senators now believe final legislation may not be ready until next week, as Democrats continue to insist on asylum protocols that do not address the ongoing crisis. And there are other issues that have emerged in the negotiations. This delay comes at a time as the American people are speaking out pretty loudly on this. As I mentioned earlier, a Harvard-Harris poll released this week confirms that 35% of voters consider immigration as their top policy concern. And 77% of voters believe the president should negotiate with Republicans over securing the border. Joining me now to discuss this, Senator Pete Ricketts from Nebraska. He serves on 3 Senate committees, including the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Ricketts, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to see you.
Great. Thank you very much for having me on again.
So, Senator, tell us the latest you're hearing on the border security negotiations. As I understand, this has become a hot topic, not just between Republicans and Democrats, but even among Republicans.
Well, certainly this is a very complicated issue, and James Langford from Oklahoma is doing a fantastic job of representing us and trying to negotiate a deal that will help crack down on the Biden policies that are just catastrophic. I mean, President Biden has basically said that our border is open, and so we literally have, since he's been president, 8.8 million people have tried to cross that border. And one of the things that people are not well aware of is just how he's abusing parole. Usually, if you look at over the Obama and Trump administrations, about 5,600 people will be paroled into this country. That's to be used in case of extreme humanitarian need or our national defense if there's something in the interest of our country. But Joe Biden last year paroled 1.2 million people who were trying to get into this country illegally into our country. About 85% of the people who are trying to cross this border are just being let go into our country. He's absolutely abusing this. And this is one of the things that we're trying to stop, as well as fix the broken asylum process, which people are also gaming to be able to get into this country. I've been to the border 4 times, and I've talked to people coming across, and they're looking for a better job. And that's not a reason for asylum. Asylum is if you cannot find a safe place within your own country. So these are things the Democrats do not want to give up on, and that's why the negotiations continue to drag out. And I just want to point out one other thing about the president. He didn't really start seriously engaging on this issue until the middle of December. So for Democrats to say they've been at it for months, Senate Democrats, yes, but the White House has not. They've hardly been engaged until almost the Christmas holidays. And that's one of the reasons why this is taking a long time. And in fact, I think it just goes to the White House really doesn't want to fix the problem at the southern border. They could if they wanted to. They really just don't. And that's why the negotiations continue to stall.
Senator, you served as governor of Nebraska and the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott. The Supreme Court giving a go-ahead to the federal government to take down, cut the razor wire, the security barriers that Texas has put in. Well, today, Governor Abbott is not backing down. He is saying that there is an invasion, and under Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, gives the state the right to self-defense. This has become a defining issue, has it not?
Well, this is why, again, this is the top issue among voters, is because we have an undefended southern border. And all of this is being litigated in the courts, as you indicated. What Governor Abbott's doing is something to protect his state. It's what any governor would try to do in such a catastrophic situation. And unfortunately, our courts take a long time to resolve this. And for example, President Biden's also being sued on his abuse of the parole process, but it'll take months and months to get this resolved. And that's why, we continue as Senate Republicans to push for a border solution, a package of legislation that will require the Biden administration to start taking steps to really control these abuses they've been doing at the southern border. But frankly, again, the Biden administration has been absolutely lawless on this. Part of the questions we're all asking ourselves is, how can we trust the Biden administration, even if the president signs a bill?
Senator, there's some beyond the border issue. There's some actual issues with the supplemental bill for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Now, part of that, there's a lot of division over Ukraine and where that money's going. But one of the issues that has raised a lot of concern among Republicans is the humanitarian spending that's associated with this bill, especially when it comes to Israel and Hamas and the United Nations. Speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the reasons why Tim Scott and I introduced the Stop Support of Hamas Act. The Trump administration rightly recognized that the United Nations Relief and Works Agency was essentially just another arm of Hamas. They were funding schools that Hamas was hiding weapons underneath. Their textbooks preached anti-Semitism and killing Jews. And of course, during this hostage crisis, one of the reports was that it was UNRWA teachers who were actually keeping some of the hostages. And the Trump administration, recognizing this, cut off our tax dollars, our U.S. tax dollars, to UNRWA. And as soon as Joe Biden got into office, he actually started giving our tax dollars back to UNRWA. In fact, $300 million last year, almost $1 billion since he's been president. And this is an organization that is essentially funding Hamas. And that's why, as we have not received the text yet for the supplemental, so we'll have to take a look at it. But myself and other colleagues have expressed grave concern about giving the UN any money that would go to humanitarian aid that would end up supporting Hamas.
That's right.
It just makes no sense to keep funding this organization.
It makes absolutely no sense, but it wouldn't be the first time we saw that coming out of Washington, D.C. Senator, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us, and thank you for keeping up the fight.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, folks. Wow. Again, we have a petition we're going to deliver to the House leadership to encourage them to stand firm on the border when this issue does come over from the Senate. So text the word border to 67742. That's the word border to 67742. This is something that we have to fight on. All right, don't go away. We're going to talk about decriminalizing and recriminalizing drugs in Oregon next here on Washington Watch. Don't go away.
Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there is the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you with us. The website, TonyPerkins.com. Be sure and check it out. Lots of resources and action items for you. The state of Oregon's experiment in decriminalizing all drugs will likely end next month, at least in part. Widespread public drug use and soaring overdoses have plagued Oregon communities since Measure 110 passed by public ballot 3 years ago. Even the state's Democrat lawmakers are considering a rollback to the drug decriminalization under Measure 110, although their proposal looks kind of like Measure 110 light. Joining me now to discuss how Measure 110 failed and what needs to happen in Oregon to address this issue is the House Minority Leader, Jeff Helfrich. He represents the 52nd District of Oregon. Leader Helfrich, welcome to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, you've said Oregon is in crisis because Measure 110 has failed. Tell us how it's failed.
It just takes an opportunity to walk through the streets of Portland, or how you see what you see on the news and the media. Actually, what 110 has done, it's a failed experiment. It has come from the progressive left activists in New York to try to have this say it's okay to do drugs and you don't have any accountability. And I was a police officer for 25 and a half years in the city of Portland, and I've watched, unfortunately, the city decline in the last probably 5 years because of these progressive policies.
Are you surprised that drug use soared, overdoses skyrocketed under this proposal, under this law?
Not surprised. I think this policy, one of the things I took as a police officer, never surprised, always amazed. I was amazed that the people actually voted for this, but understanding that the ballot title talked about directing resources for recovery, people to get recovery, but what they didn't see at the bottom of the last line was reclassifying certain possession of drugs. And that is what has ruined our society, and it's this experiment that has just, again, failed. We as Republicans have offered solutions to this, and our solutions aren't partisan. Our solutions are bipartisan, but they're solutions that Oregonians want.
It's interesting that under the proposed recriminalization, to a degree, is that it's going to clamp down on the selling of drugs, but the use of drugs, it's still going to be pretty lenient. So I have a hard time figuring out, why is it okay to buy drugs but not sell it?
So are you looking at our proposal or the Democrats?
No, the Democrats' proposal, not yours, but the Democrats' proposal.
Yeah, they don't want to have any, but they don't want any accountability. This is how crazy this is where that proposal shows that they want to have people that are addicts be supporters of other addicts to make sure that they're okay using drugs. And there's no accountability. And it's unfortunate because the people want the accountability. And our proposal, they say want to make it a Class C misdemeanor, and that Class C misdemeanor doesn't do anything. It's just a step above a violation. And unfortunately, our officers aren't going to want to put what's the governmental cause to intersect in this person's life when it's a Class C misdemeanor, and there's a lot of bad things that can happen. And they just don't want anybody to have accountability, unfortunately.
What I saw as kind of leading to the passage of this is they said, well, this is going to address drug addiction because the funds that we raise from this, from legalizing drugs, is going to go to drug treatment. And just reading the statistics, only 1% of people who received citations for possession of drugs using them illegally sought help through the hotlines. I mean, this thing, it didn't work as proposed.
It is unfortunate that they have done that, and I think it was pixie dust and fairy tales that thinking people are going to get that help. And it's unfortunate it didn't happen.
So talk about the way forward that the Republicans are proposing there in Oregon.
I'm sorry, our internet connections is very good right now. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, let me restate that. So what are the Republicans there proposing as the way forward to fix this?
Our proposal is very simple. It's what the Oregonians want. We want to have accountability. And the easiest way to explain this, we have a system in place that comes when you get arrested for a DUI charge, driving under the influence, you can go into diversion. We offer solutions. We don't want to put people in prison or jails. We want to get people the treatment they need. You will get arrested, get booked in through a mug and print, then get diverted into treatment. If you don't complete that treatment, then there's going to be other accountability measures in the criminal justice system to get you treatment and enforce that there. We've created an environment. We have to help people, but this is the way we can dig ourselves out, and we don't have to recreate a bunch of new systems. You already have.
Right. I think a good proposal.
DUI diversion program. We just have drug accountability with it.
We did when I was in the legislature in my home state of Louisiana, former police officer myself, and that's what we did. We actually created drug courts where we diverted people into those drug courts. Nonviolent offenders, gave them the opportunity to seek help versus going into prison and becoming hardened criminals. So I mean, this actually makes good sense because it does get people help, but they've got to know that this behavior, this antisocial behavior, is not going to work long term.
You're absolutely correct. We do have drug courts. Unfortunately, past legislatures haven't funded those correctly, and it's just a shame that didn't happen because those things work. Multnomah County.
All right, I think we're having some trouble there with our connection, but Leader, if you can hear me, thanks so much for
Rod Underhill. Well,
Leader Helfrich, thank you for joining us, and we're going to be tracking this very, very closely to see this because we're actually seeing this in other states, folks, that legalize marijuana, that are realizing now that this was the wrong path. Now, it's frankly. This is, as I said earlier, it's not rocket science. This is pretty straightforward. And so I think you're going to see more and more states that went down this path are going to kind of backtrack, hopefully. But it takes people like Jeff to get in office who have a little bit of common sense and experience and are working to pass laws that make sense. All right. Guess what happened in Ohio this afternoon? All right, some good news coming out of the state of Ohio. The state Senate there overrode the governor's veto of a bill that protects children from experimental surgeries and drugs. We're going to be joined by a state senator from the state Senate there in Ohio when we come back. Don't go away. More Washington Watch straight ahead.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. Leah Sheribu, a Christian teenager in Nigeria, remains a captive of Boko Haram for her refusal to renounce her Christian faith. Chinese pastor Wang Yi is serving a 9-year sentence for speaking publicly against the Chinese government. In Pakistan, Asif Pervez is on death row for allegedly sending a blasphemous text message. All of this because people in power decided different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
This is Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday. Again, the website, tonyperkins.com. Again, I want to remind you, next Wednesday, January the 31st, is our national gathering for prayer and repentance. It'll be at the Bible Museum beginning at 7:30 Eastern Time. Now, it is sold out. However, it will be streamed. So if you'd like to find out more, text the word prayer to 67742. That's the word prayer to 67742, or praydc.org. The Ohio Senate voted earlier this afternoon to override Governor Mike DeWine's veto of House Bill 68. Now, we've talked a lot about this bill. This is a bill that now will soon be law, as it's now overridden the governor's veto in both chambers. It protects children from experimental gender procedures that are being pushed by the transgender activist. And this measure also prohibits boys and men from occupying in spaces, locker rooms that are designated for females, and from competing in female sports. Now, the Senate needed 3/5 of the chamber to override the governor's veto and easily achieved that by a vote, I believe, of 24-8. Joining me now to discuss this is Ohio State Senator Andy Brenner. He represents Ohio's 19th Senate District. He also chairs the Ohio Senate Education Committee. Senator Brenner, welcome to Washington Watch. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Tony. I very much appreciate being on.
So pretty good news. Ohio now comes, I think it's the 23rd state to pass a SAFE Act type legislation to protect children. In your opinion, why is this legislation so important for protecting children in Ohio?
Simply put, the scientific evidence is not there. I gave a floor speech about a month ago in the Senate when we passed it to point out the fact that Sweden, the country of Sweden, which started and legalized transgender surgeries back in 1972, pulled out of doing any kind of hormone therapy or anything 2 years ago. And this is a liberal country of Sweden doing this. I asked the doctors who testified. I actually sat in on the committee that heard the bill. I was a fill-in for a couple of the members who weren't able to make it. So I sat through 8 hours of opponent testimony. So I asked the doctors, please show me the scientific research that backs up the utilization of hormone treatment and all this in transgender surgery. They couldn't defend the transgender surgery for minors, but they said that they would supply me scientifically based research that backed up what they were doing.
I never got it. And I spoke on the Senate floor today and mentioned the fact that, there are studies out there that say that there isn't enough scientific evidence to prove that this helps reduce suicides or depression. And in fact, it's very anecdotal at best. So, it's important for that. It's obviously important for Save Women's Sports. I think even Governor DeWine was probably in favor of that part of the bill. We should not be having, transgender boys competing in girls' sports. It's just it's not appropriate. And it gives them a competitive advantage. It's very obvious, what should be very obvious. But we did have a lot of the Democrats on the floor today basically spoke out in strong opposition to the veto override. I think that's, it's unfortunate. They say they're the party of science, but when it comes to science, to things like abortion and, conception, they don't look at the science then at that point. And then the same thing with, transgender stuff for kids. I mean, it's just, it's surprising to me that, we get that kind of backlash. We did have protesters outside the State House yelling and screaming and chanting against it. And we had a few people disrupt the Senate session this afternoon, but it wasn't too bad.
The vote, pretty overwhelming. What were you hearing? Were senators hearing from voters in the state encouraging them to take this step?
Absolutely. In fact, I had my staff tally up all the people who wanted me to override the governor versus those who did not want me to override the governor. And we had several hundred people reach out to our office, individuals who wanted us to override the governor. And probably about 10% of that were to do the opposite, which was to agree with the governor. So within my district, it was overwhelming support to override the governor.
I've known the governor for years. In fact, I actually campaigned with him a number of years ago when he first ran for governor. Surprised that he took this position in vetoing this common sense legislation. Were you surprised by the veto?
To some degree, no, because the community, the transgender community, the families went in. I mean, they testified, and it was very emotional. And I know he met with many of them. And they were pleading with him, saying, oh, the science is there. This is helping us. It's helping save lives. And the governor, before, like when it came to masking and the lockdowns a few years ago, he listened to the scientific community, or at least what he thought was the science and the experts, and he followed their advice. And I think that's what he did here. He was wrong on it. And they don't really have the data to back up what they're doing.
You're absolutely right, because we've done a lot of research. In fact, we put together the first SAFE Act in Arkansas a number of years ago, and you're right, the science still is not there. The science is on the side of the fact that boys are created boys and girls are created girls, and we need to support that. Senator, thanks so much for joining us today, and thank you for being a part of creating some good news out of the Buckeye State.
Thank you very much.
All right, Senator Brennan from Ohio. All right, coming up next, President Biden hit the campaign trail this week, and he was in full swing last night. What was he rallying about? Abortion. We're going to talk more about what's ahead in 2024 after the break. Don't go away.
The world is hurting. Streets are filled with crime. Families are broken. Sin is celebrated, and God is mocked. Everywhere we look, the wages of our sin are on full display. As Christians, we know that surrender to God's will is the solution to our biggest problems, but not everyone agrees. Even in church, we hear people say the most important thing is to be tolerant, that we shouldn't impose our morality on other people, and that loving our neighbor means celebrating what they do. But you can't do that. It's not that you don't love your neighbor, you do, but you care about God's opinion more than your neighbor's opinion, and this makes you different. In fact, sometimes it makes you feel alone, like you're the only one. But there is good news. You are not alone, not even close. Research has found that there are 59 million American adults who are a lot like you. There are millions of people around the country who are born again, deeply committed to practicing their faith, and believe the Bible is the reliable Word of God. But that's not all. They're also engaged in our government, They're voters. They're more likely to be involved in their community, and they're making a difference in elections. The problem is that a lot of them feel alone too. We want to change that. FRC wants to connect these 59 million Americans to speak the truth together, no matter the cost. If you want to learn more about this group and what it means to be a spiritually active, governance-engaged conservative, or if you want to find out if you are one of these SageCons yourself, go to frc.org/SageCon and take the quiz to find out. The world is hurting, and we have the solution. We can't do it alone, but we can do it if we work together. That's what we're working toward every day. Join us. Go to frc.org/SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more. That's SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more.
I'm Tony Perkins, and I have a prediction. This year, there will be uncertainty and continued political and cultural division. Okay, so that's not that startling of a prediction, but try this. We can have peace and even joy amid the chaos. Jesus said in John 15, "These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full." Jesus told us there would be days like this so that our eyes would be upon Him and His promises rather than our circumstances. Now, how can we keep our eyes on Jesus? Abide in Him by being in His Word. At Family Research Council, we want to help you do that, which is the reason for the Stand on the Word Bible reading plan. With just 10 to 15 minutes each day, you will have read the entire Bible in just 2 years. But most importantly, you'll be abiding in Him daily, living in His joy and peace in these trying times. Join me on this journey through the Bible. Go to frc.org/Bible for more. Welcome back. All right, mark this down. Next Wednesday, January the 31st, the National Gathering for Prayer and Repentance at the Bible Museum. Now, it is sold out. However, you can be a part of it. And we're going to have the House Speaker there. We're going to have a number of members of Congress that are going to be there, along with actually a lot of international leaders praying and repenting. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. And you can join us. You can be a part of it. Go to praydc.org or text the word prayer to 67742, and I'll send you a link with the information. And also, let me just mention one more time, border. If you want to weigh in on the border issue, text the word border to 67742. All right. In what appears to be an effort to distract attention from the New Hampshire primary results last night, President Biden and Vice President Harris actually held a pro-abortion rally in Virginia last night together. This is their first joint campaign appearance in 2024, and it was all about abortion. Although the president did say something I want to point out, because the former governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, was there. So play clip number 8.
Hello, Virginia. And the real governor, Terry McAuliffe.
Was that a statement by an election denier? The real governor, Terry McAuliffe, who was actually defeated? Is that? Interesting. But their focus, even though his speech was often interrupted by pro-Hamas hecklers, the president made clear that Democrats' devotion, their devotion to abortion, will be the central theme of his 2024 campaign. Now, I discussed earlier in the program that voters are actually focused on immigration and inflation. Yet President Biden and the Democrats want to campaign on their commitment to killing babies in the womb. I mean, here's the deal. It doesn't matter what the question is. The president's answer is abortion. I mean, it just doesn't matter. Mr. President, how are you going to deal with the border crisis? Codify Roe v. Wade. Mr. President, how are you going to address inflation impacting America's working families? Reproductive freedom. I mean, it's like one of those dolls where you pull the string and it's all that comes out. Joining me now to discuss this and more, Congressman Rich McCormick. He serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Armed Services Committee. He's also a medical doctor, and he is on the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, represents the 6th Congressional District of Georgia, and he is also a decorated Marine helicopter pilot. And as I said, he's a doctor in the ER room. Dr. McCormick, Semper Fi, and welcome back to Washington Watch.
Semper Fi, good to be with you today.
So, the president, first campaign stop with the vice president, and it's all about abortion. Do they think they're going to get a repeat of 2022 and Republicans are just going to allow the Democrats to define this debate?
Well, they're trying to find something that the populist movement works with. I think it's ultimately hypocritical that everybody who's talking about the pro-choice has been given the choice of life that they're all living. None of them have been aborted. Ultimate hypocrisy that they talk about the rights of minorities, where a vast preponderance of the abortions by percentage are done amongst minorities. The fact is, if you want to talk about a populist movement, they're on the losing side of the budget with the debt, with crime, with the border, with energy, with education, with smaller government. They needed something to find a popular movement, but quite frankly, most of America does not want to see late-term abortions anyway, so they're on the wrong side of history in that too.
So is that what this is about? It's about distracting. Don't look what we've not been able to do or the mess that we've created. We want to talk about abortion.
They're just trying to grab at straws now. What can we find that the vast preponderance or at least a majority of Americans agree with? Now, there may be the majority of America wants some sort of choice, but that's not going to win an election by itself. And certainly, like you said, I think over time, it was developed when we find our morality and when we find what's right, what's good for human dignity, for the rights of women who are unborn as well as born. I think we'll be on the right side of history on this.
I think you're absolutely right. We have a bad connection. We're gonna reconnect with you, and so because I want to make sure that our listeners have the benefit of hearing everything that you say. I think he's right, and here's what I'm encouraged about, because in 2022, post Roe, no one was really prepared to address. I mean, some of us were, but most in the pro-life members of Congress, political leaders, campaign strategists were unprepared to deal with this issue. So the Democrats, they were the ones talking about it, and they were defining the position of Republicans. And the Republicans, for the most part, were silent. And so it was pretty easy for them to scare the American public with their deceptive statements on that. But that's not going to be the case this time. I think you're going to see Republicans are going to challenge them, and they're not going to get away with that. Just like some of these statements that were made last night at this can you imagine? First, think about this. Think about this for a moment from you can think about it politically, but I'm going to think about it from a spiritual standpoint. So you are running for president of the United States, and your first really campaign kickoff is going to be an abortion rally. And what does that say? And that says, man, we as a nation are in deep trouble. And these two competing worldviews are really what's on the ballot. Now, I want to play a clip. I think we got Dr. McCormick back on. Dr. McCormick, I want to play a clip from Nancy Pelosi. She was her voice was also in on this yesterday. Clip number 14.
There will be a national ban on access to an abortion. So the election's about freedom, democracy, yes, writ large, but it's also about your personal freedom in your lives. Okay.
So there's a lot of problems with that statement. But first, this talk about a national ban on abortion. This is the Democrats projecting, because the only bill that's been on the House floor was Nancy Pelosi's bill, the Women's Health Protection Act, which codified Roe v. Wade, abortion until birth, in federal statute and eliminated almost every pro-life law across the nation. I mean, they're trying to scare the public when they're the ones that are actually trying to impose their view on Americans.
Absolutely, and you're talking about the most extreme views that are not supported by the majority of Americans, where you could literally take a baby that's minutes, maybe seconds away from taking its first breath and eliminate that life as if that was okay, as if that was moral, as if the people support that. That's how extreme they are, and then they call us the extremists. The people have spoken. We've been fighting for these rights for the unborn children for a long time. I think those people who want to deny what the Bible says, what morality has indicated, what so many other, well, everybody alive has been given that opportunity to live and make their choices and to succeed and fail as Americans. That's being taken away from both men and women who are unborn. And I think, like I said, it's the ultimate hypocrisy when you talk about these people who have been given the choice to live, taking it away from somebody else, to have that chance to succeed and to be blessed by God in the ways that they've been set aside as unique individuals created in God's womb, known from the time that they're created in God's womb according to the Word. And there's so many people who say that they believe in the Bible who like to deny that part of the Bible.
Right. What encourages me, let me just say this. One, you are one of the reasons I'm encouraged, Dr. McCormick, because you're openly talking about this issue. In 2022, in the midterm elections, so many Republicans, they didn't talk about it. They didn't know really what to say. But it's not really, as you said, it's not difficult. We just go back to what we've been saying for nearly 50 years. We need to protect unborn children. Let them talk about abortion. We're going to talk about unborn children and their mothers and making sure they're not scarred for life, because we don't want them to be deceived and led down a deceptive path at a time of crisis.
That's right, and that's why we need to make it very easy for them to give them up for adoption. Look, there's a long list of people waiting to give these children a really good home, a really good chance of not just surviving, but thriving, being the most productive people in society. Two of my best friends, one of them the Marines, I can't imagine this world without them. I mean, they're some of the most highly productive, best friends, most moral, most beneficial to society kind of people that you'd ever meet in your life. And had they been not given that chance, we wouldn't have them. I wouldn't have a best friend. I wouldn't have people who would literally take a bullet for me, who take in the controls when something going wrong in the aircraft. When I was a Marine Corps pilot, somebody who would watch after you if you're jumping out of an aircraft, or somebody who'd give you their last dollar when you're in need. I mean, these are the kind of people that are not going to be here for us. You're talking about some of your children's best friends.
Right.
You're talking about leaders in the church, leaders in society, leaders in politics, scientists, doctors, ministers, you name it.
That's such a good point, Congressman McCormick, because that is what the Biden administration and the left has signaled they're going to do in the 2024 election. They want to tell stories of how women have been impacted since the court overturned Roe v. Wade. Well, that's what they do. They want to tell these stories, and some of them true, some of them I don't think are so true. But that's what we need to do. We need to talk about the person sitting next to you that wouldn't be here if someone had not chosen life for them or given them up for adoption when they were faced with a crisis pregnancy.
That's right. And every time I'm asked, I'm an ER doc, and they ask me, well, what about the idea where the woman would be harmed or killed if they don't terminate the pregnancy? Well, first of all, if the woman's going to die, the baby's going to die too. So let's not be absurd. Right. There's never a case where I can draw up where you can keep the baby alive in order to kill the mom. I mean, let
me just stop you right there, because that is an extremely important point, because the mother is the first patient. And the mother is always to be attended to first, because you're not going to save the baby and let the mother die. That's just not going to happen. That is a red herring. It's a false argument that they're putting forth.
And every time I'm asked by media about that, I say, well, give me a scenario. And they can't. And what's funny, I can give you two scenarios that they would love to try to. One is, let's say there's a woman who was in a car crash, and you're going to deliver the baby, and the woman's dying anyways. If you deliver the baby, you actually give your mother a better chance of survival. Not by aborting the baby, but by actually delivering the baby. If the baby's premature, then there's nothing I can do about it anyways. If the mother does, like I said, the baby will die. But there was one instance, and my wife is an oncologist, and she had a patient. And I'll tell you one instance where you could maybe make a case. Let me tell you what happened with that case. You had a woman with metastatic cancer, hundreds of tumors all over her body, including her brain and her liver, metastatic. She was early in her pregnancy, and she's told, if you get an abortion, we could try to give you chemo now, try to get you radiated now, and we'll extend your life. Otherwise, you're probably going to die a lot faster by proceeding with this pregnancy and delaying your treatment. Well, she made a choice. She made a choice to keep the baby at her own peril, that she would progress more rapidly without the treatment. She delivered the baby. They started aggressive chemotherapy, aggressive radiation, and let me tell you the synopsis of this. It's the one scenario I thought, well, okay, you can make a case here. Well, ironically, she made the choice for the life of her child. She is now a miracle. She is cancer-free, almost a decade out. She's had 2 more children, which is all impossible because she made the right choice. And that's the only case I can ever come up with. And so there you have it. Just another story created by God to show why life is important and why He is in control.
Wow. A powerful story. And again, that's what I think needs to be highlighted in this discussion. I do not think Republicans need to back up at all and apologize for wanting to protect the unborn and their mothers from the horrors of abortion.
Indeed, we would be bad people if we believe that that's life. If we believe that God has known that life since the creation, the knitting together in the mother's womb, wouldn't we be kind of bad people for not standing up for that life? I'm not trying to vilify anybody. I'm just literally standing up for what I believe is God-created life.
I agree. But what does this tell us as a nation if we just step back dispassionately, if we can, and I honestly I don't think we can, and we probably shouldn't even try to be dispassionate about this, but when you have one party that this is at the heart of their campaign to get control and to lead this nation is on abortion. That's what they're leading with. That's their priority. What does that tell you?
It tells me they will do anything to be elected, anything that's bad for the nation, bad for morality. All they care about is power. They'll open the southern border. They'll transform the United States with people who are not allowed to work, who are totally dependent on the government, knowing it's not good for the United States, but knowing it will keep them in power if they're able to do it. They will stop at nothing to stay in power, and this is just another example of how morality doesn't matter. The future of this nation doesn't matter. All that matters is their power. They want the government to be God. They want government to determine morality. They want the government to determine business. They want the government to determine medicine. They want government to be the ultimate deciding factor in your life. They do not believe in the freedom of individuals or in the sovereignty of God.
And if you will not protect the most innocent and vulnerable in our society, who will you protect? Dr. McCormick, thank you so much for joining us today. Always great to talk with you. Thanks so much.
God bless you. Semper Fi.
All right. Congressman Rich McCormick from Georgia, 6th Congressional District. Folks, this is once again a reminder of the choices that we have and the consequences of elections. And this is yes, it's a political issue, but it's a spiritual issue. And we need to line up on the right side of this issue. Well, we're out of time for today, but Lord willing, we'll be back again tomorrow, and I hope you will as well. But until then, let me leave you once again with the encouraging words of the Apostle Paul found in Ephesians 6, where he says, when you've done everything you can do, when you've prayed, when you've prepared, and when you've taken your stand, by all means, keep standing.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you've heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com. Also, to leave a comment about Washington Watch, call our watch line at 1-866-372-7234. That's 1-866-372-7234.